The sky over Haven 7 burned orange and red as the Vethrani warships descended through the clouds. Danny Cole pressed his face against the window of his family's small farmhouse and watched the massive ships block out the morning sun. He was only 8 years old, but he understood what those ships meant. His mother had warned him about the Vethrani Empire for as long as he could remember. "Danny, get away from the window," his mother Nora said. Her voice was calm, but her hands shook as she packed a small bag with food and water. "We need to move to the shelter." Danny turned and saw Myra standing in the doorway. The Velkathi was almost 7 feet tall when she stood on her back legs, with thick silver-gray fur and eyes that held more intelligence than any Earth animal. She had been with their family since before Danny was born. The colonists of Haven 7 had discovered the Velkathi living in the forests when they first arrived on this world. Most people thought they were just clever animals, like wolves or large dogs. But Danny knew better. Myra understood everything. She just chose not to speak. The first explosions hit the colony center. Danny felt the ground shake beneath his feet. Myra made a low sound in her throat and moved closer to him, her large body positioning itself between Danny and the window. "Good girl," Nora whispered. She knelt down in front of Danny and held his face in her hands. "Listen to me carefully. If anything happens to me, you stay with Myra. Do you understand? She will protect you." "Mom, nothing is going to happen," Danny said, but his voice was small and scared. Nora kissed his forehead. "I love you more than anything in this universe." The door exploded inward. Danny screamed as Vethrani soldiers poured into their home. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms each. Their eyes were completely black, and they moved with a speed that seemed impossible for their size. Nora pushed Danny behind her. "Run to Myra," she shouted. "Run now." Danny ran. He felt Myra's fur under his fingers as he grabbed onto her. The Velkathi pulled him close with one massive paw and began backing toward the rear door of the house. Danny looked over his shoulder and saw his mother fighting. She had grabbed a kitchen knife and was swinging it at the soldiers. For a moment, she looked like a warrior from the old Earth stories she used to tell him. Then one of the soldiers fired his weapon. Nora fell. Danny tried to scream, but no sound came out. Myra held him tighter and kept moving toward the door. The soldiers were focused on securing the house. They barely glanced at the large animal carrying the child. "The Velkathi," one soldier said in broken human language. "Just a beast. Ignore it." Myra stopped at the back door. She looked down at Nora, who was still alive but barely moving. Their eyes met. Danny saw something pass between them, a communication he could not understand but could feel in his heart. Nora's lips moved. "Protect him. Whatever it takes." Myra dipped her head once. Then she carried Danny out into the burning colony. They hid in the forest for 3 days. Myra found water and caught small animals for Danny to eat. She kept him warm at night with her thick fur and watched over him while he slept. Danny cried for his mother until he had no more tears left. Myra stayed close, her large head resting against his, making soft sounds that somehow made the pain a little easier to bear. On the 4th day, the Vethrani found them. Danny was gathering berries near a stream when he heard the sound of their aircraft. He looked up and saw the small ship descending toward the clearing. He tried to run, but the soldiers were too fast. They grabbed him before he could reach the trees where Myra was hiding. "A human child," the commander said. He was different from the other soldiers. His uniform was covered in medals, and he carried himself like someone important. "Excellent. The High Council has been asking for specimens from this world." Danny struggled against the soldiers holding him. "Let me go. Let me go." The commander laughed. "Such spirit. The Grand Arbiter will be pleased. Human children are rare prizes in our empire." He looked at his soldiers. Put him on the transport. He will make a fine gift for the celebration. Danny was carried toward a large ship waiting in a nearby field. He looked back at the forest, searching for Myra. He could not see her anywhere. His heart sank. Maybe she had run away. Maybe she thought he was not worth saving. But then he saw movement in the shadows between the trees. Two silver eyes watching, waiting. Myra had not left him. The soldiers loaded Danny into the transport ship. They put him in a small cell with metal walls and a hard floor. The doors sealed shut, and Danny heard the engines begin to power up. He pressed his hand against the cold metal and tried not to cry. The ship lifted off the ground. Danny felt his stomach drop as they rose higher and higher into the sky. He was leaving Haven 7. He was leaving everything he knew. And he was completely alone. Or so he thought. An hour into the flight, Danny heard something. It was a soft sound, barely louder than a whisper. A scratching noise coming from the ventilation shaft above his cell. He looked up and saw the metal grate move slightly. Then he heard it. A low growl, familiar, safe. Danny's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of hope. He pressed himself against the wall beneath the vent and whispered as quietly as he could, "Myra, you came." The growl came again, softer this time. Almost like a purr. Danny closed his eyes and let out a shaky breath. The Vethrani had taken him as a prize. They thought he was just a scared little boy with no one to protect him. They had seen Myra in the forest and dismissed her as a simple animal, not worth their attention. They had no idea what they had brought onto their ship. And by the time they figured it out, it would be far too late. Danny curled up on the cold floor of his cell. But for the first time since the invasion began, he did not feel afraid. Somewhere above him, moving through the dark spaces of the ship, was a creature who loved him. A creature who had made a promise to his dying mother. And Myra always kept her promises. The Vethrani warship was called the Dominion's Will, and it was the largest ship Danny had ever seen. From his small cell, he could hear the hum of its engines and feel the vibration of its massive power systems. The journey to the Vethrani capital would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks of being treated like an animal in a cage. Commander Zorath visited Danny on the second day. He stood outside the cell and studied Danny the way a collector might study a rare insect. "You are smaller than I expected," Zorath said. "Human children are supposed to be special. Your species makes such a fuss about protecting them. I wanted to see why." Danny sat in the corner of his cell and said nothing. He had learned quickly that the Vethrani enjoyed it when he reacted. So he stopped reacting. Zorath smiled, showing rows of sharp gray teeth. "Silent. Good. The Grand Arbiter prefers his prizes to be quiet." He turned and walked away, his forearms clasped behind his back. That night, Danny found a small package pushed through the ventilation grate. It was a ration pack from the ship's kitchen, torn open but still full of food. Danny ate it quickly and looked up at the dark shaft above him. "Thank you, Myra," he whispered. A soft sound came back, something between a growl and a purr. Danny smiled for the first time in days. The days passed slowly. Danny learned the rhythm of the ship. He learned when the guards changed shifts and when the lights dimmed for the night cycle. He learned which guards were cruel and which ones simply ignored him. One guard was different from the others. His name was Lieutenant Keth, and he was younger than the rest. He did not look at Danny like a prize or a pet. He looked at Danny like a person. "You understand our language," Keth said one evening, standing outside Danny's cell. "Most humans we capture cannot learn it so quickly." Danny shrugged. "My mom taught me that languages are important. She said you never know when you might need to talk to someone different from you." Keth tilted his head. "Your mother sounds wise. Where is she now?" "Your soldiers killed her." Keth was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked away. I am sorry. War is cruel to everyone. Danny did not respond. He did not want the apology of a Vethrani soldier. But he filed away the information that at least one of them could feel something like guilt. On the 8th night, 2 guards decided to have some fun with the human child. They came to his cell during the late shift when most of the crew was sleeping. Danny woke to the sound of his door opening and saw 2 tall Vethrani standing over him with cruel smiles on their faces. The commander said not to damage the prize, one of them said. But he did not say we could not scare it a little. Danny backed against the wall. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. The guard stepped into his cell dot, and then the lights went out. Danny heard a sound he would never forget. It was fast and brutal. A growl, a scream, and then silence. When the emergency lights flickered back on, the guards were gone. The only sign they had ever been, there was a thin trail of dark liquid leading toward the ventilation shaft. Danny looked up at the grate. 2 silver eyes looked back at him. Thank you, Danny whispered. Myra blinked once. Then she disappeared into the darkness. The next morning, the ship was in chaos. 2 guards had vanished during the night. Commander Zorath ordered a full search, but they found nothing. The soldiers whispered about ghosts and curses. Some of them refused to patrol the lower decks alone. Highkeeper Sarath was an old Vethrani female who served as the ship's spiritual leader. She came to the bridge while Commander Zorath was arguing with his officers. There is something on this ship, Sarah said. Her voice was thin and reedy, but everyone stopped talking when she spoke. I have felt it since we left that world. Something is here with us. Something focused. Something that will not stop. Zorath waved his 4 hands dismissively. We scanned every deck. We found nothing except a stray animal in cargo hold 7. Probably came aboard looking for food. An animal, Sarath repeated. She closed her black eyes. I do not think it is merely an animal, Commander. I think it is something far more dangerous. Enough, Zorath snapped. I will not have my crew frightened by superstition. The guards probably deserted. It happens on long voyages. Sarath opened her eyes and looked at him. You are wrong, and you will learn how wrong you are before this journey ends. She left the bridge without another word. That night, Danny pressed his face against the ventilation grate. He could see a sliver of silver fur in the darkness. I knew you would come, Danny whispered. I knew you would not leave me. The fur shifted. A large paw appeared, pressing gently against the grate from the other side. Danny placed his small hand against his side of the metal. Mom told you to protect me, did she not? A low sound came from the darkness. It was not a growl or a purr. It was something else. Something that sounded almost like agreement. I miss her, Danny said. Tears ran down his cheeks. I miss her so much. The paw pressed harder against the grate. Danny felt the warmth of it through the metal. But I am not alone, Danny continued. I have you. And you have me. And we are going to get through this together. He wiped his eyes and took a deep breath. They think they captured a prize, Danny said. They think I am alone and helpless. But they do not know about you. They do not know what you can do. And when they figure it out, it will be too late for them. In the darkness of the ventilation shaft, Myra's eyes glowed silver. She had crossed the stars for this boy. She had killed for him and would kill again. The Vethrani thought she was just a primitive beast, a simple animal that had wandered onto their ship by accident. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The journey continued toward the Vethrani capital. And somewhere in the shadows of the Dominion's will, something patient and loving was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Vethrani capital world was called Desara, and it was the heart of their empire. Danny saw it through a small window as the Dominion's will descended through layers of purple clouds. Massive cities stretched across the planet's surface. connected by bridges and tunnels that seemed to go on forever. Millions of Vethrani lived here, and they all served one purpose: the glory of the Empire. Commander Zorith's estate sat on a hill overlooking the central city. It was a sprawling complex of black stone and glass, designed to show off his wealth and power. This was where Danny would stay until the celebration, when he would be presented to the Grand Arbiter as a gift. Guards brought Danny to a small room on the top floor. It had a window with metal bars and a bed that was too hard. They put chains around his ankles, thin enough to let him walk but heavy enough to remind him that he was property now. "You will be clean and quiet when visitors come," a cold voice said. Danny turned and saw a tall Vethrani standing in the doorway. "I am Warden Calyx. I run this estate. You will do exactly what I say, or you will be punished. Do you understand?" Danny nodded. He had learned that silence was his best weapon. Calyx smiled. "Good. The commander has high hopes for you. Do not disappoint him." The door closed. Danny heard the lock click into place. He walked to the window and looked out at the alien city below. Somewhere out there, Mira was watching. He was sure of it. She had followed him across the stars. She would not stop now. 3 days passed. Danny was brought out whenever important Vethrani came to visit the estate. They looked at him like he was a painting or a sculpture, something interesting but not alive. They asked Zorith questions about humans. How do they eat? How do they sleep? Do they really cry water from their eyes? Danny stood quietly and let them study him. He counted guards and memorized hallways. He noticed which doors were locked and which ones were left open. He was gathering information, just like his mother had taught him. On the 4th night, Danny heard voices outside his window. He crept to the bars and looked down. 2 figures stood in the shadows of the garden below. One was tall and thin, clearly Vethrani. The other was much larger, with silver-gray fur that shone in the moonlight. Danny's heart stopped. Mira was down there, and she was talking to someone. The Vethrani turned and walked toward a side door of the estate. Danny recognized him after a moment. It was one of the human slaves he had seen working in the kitchens. No, not Vethrani. Human. A human man dressed in slave clothing. Myra watched the man go, then looked up at Danny's window. Their eyes met. She dipped her head once, then disappeared into the shadows. The next morning, the human man found Danny during his daily walk in the garden. The guards kept their distance, bored with watching a child walk in circles. "Do not react," the man said quietly. He was pretending to work on a flower bed. "My name is Ben Harris. I was captured from Haven 7 3 years ago. I know who you are, Danny Cole, and I know what followed you here." Danny kept walking, his face calm. "Is she safe?" "Safer than any of us," Ben said. He pulled a weed from the soil. "The Velkathi are remarkable creatures. The Vethrani think they are just animals because they do not speak our languages. But they are smart. Smarter than the Vethrani know. And when one of them bonds with a human family, that bond is unbreakable." Danny felt tears prick his eyes, but he blinked them away. "She promised my mother she would protect me. And she will," Ben said. "She has been clearing the perimeter guards for the past 2 nights. 12 soldiers have disappeared." Warden Calyx is starting to lose his mind, trying to figure out what is happening. Danny stopped walking. "What is the plan?" "The celebration is in 5 days. They are going to move you to a holding area beneath the Grand Arena. That is where she will make her move." Ben stood up and brushed dirt from his hands. "Be ready. When the moment comes, stay close to her and do not look back." He walked away before Danny could respond. That night, Danny lay awake in his bed and listened to the sounds of the estate. Somewhere in the distance, he heard a scream cut short. Then silence. Mira was working, removing obstacles one by one. On the 3rd night before the celebration, Commander Zorth came to Danny's room. His forehands were clenched into fists, and his black eyes were wild with anger. "Something is killing my guards," Zorth said. He grabbed Danny by the collar and lifted him off the floor. "Is it one of your human tricks? Some kind of weapon you brought with you?" Danny shook his head. "I am just a child. I do not have any weapons." Zorth stared at him for a long moment. Then he dropped Danny to the floor. "You are lying," Zorth said. "I can see it in your eyes. But it does not matter. In 5 days, you will belong to the Grand Arbiter. And whatever is hunting my soldiers will have no reason to continue." He turned and walked toward the door, and then he stopped. Myra was standing at the end of the hallway. She was not hiding anymore. She stood on her back legs, almost 7 feet tall, her silver fur catching the torchlight. Her eyes locked on the Zorth's, and for the first time since Danny had known him, the commander looked afraid. "What is that?" Zorth whispered. Danny stood up slowly. "That is the creature who loves me, and you should not have taken me from her." Myra growled low and deep. Then she stepped backward into the shadows and vanished. Zorth stood frozen for several seconds. Then he ran from the room, shouting for his guards. Danny walked to his window and looked out at the night sky. The celebration was in 5 days. The grand arena was waiting, and somewhere in the darkness, Mira was preparing for the final act. The Vethrani Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds. They had never lost a war. They believed they were invincible. They were about to learn that love does not care about armies or empires. It only cares about the ones it protects, and Myra was done being patient. The Grand Arena of the Sara was the largest structure on the planet. It could hold 100,000 Vethrani, and on the day of the celebration, every seat was filled. The most powerful families in the Empire had come to watch the Grand Arbiter receive his gifts. Conquered treasures from 12 worlds would be presented today. But the main attraction was the human child from Haven-7. Danny stood in a holding cell beneath the arena floor. He could hear the crowd above him, thousands of voices speaking in the sharp clicks and hisses of the Vethrani language. His chains had been polished until they shone like silver. His clothes had been replaced with a simple white robe, the traditional uniform for a prize being presented to the Grand Arbiter. Commander Zorth entered the cell with 6 guards. His face was tight with anger and fear. He had not slept in 3 days. More than 30 of his soldiers had disappeared since they arrived on the Sara, and no one could explain how or why. "Today you become property of the Grand Arbiter," Zorth said. "Behave yourself, and your life will be comfortable. Cause trouble, and you will suffer. Do you understand?" Danny looked at him with calm eyes. "I understand perfectly." Something in his tone made Zorth pause. The commander studied the boy's face, looking for the fear that should have been there. He found nothing but quiet patience. "Take him to the platform," Zorth ordered. The guards led Danny through a long tunnel that opened onto the arena floor. The sunlight was blinding after days in dark rooms. Danny blinked and saw the massive crowd surrounding him on all sides. A raised platform stood in the center of the arena, and on it sat a throne made of black crystal. The Grand Arbiter himself was there, an ancient Vethrani with more medals on his chest than Danny could count. Commander Zorth walked Danny to the base of the platform. He bowed deeply to the Grand Arbiter. "My lord," Zorth said, his voice amplified by speakers throughout the arena, "I present to you a prize from the recently conquered world of Haven-7, a human child, rare and valuable, a symbol of our empire's greatness and the weakness of our enemies." The crowd cheered. The Grand Arbiter leaned forward on his throne, studying Danny with cold interest. "Bring the child closer," the Grand Arbiter commanded. Zorth grabbed Danny's arm and pulled him up the steps of the platform. Danny kept his eyes forward, his heart pounding in his chest. Not from fear, from anticipation. Any moment now, The Grand Arbiter reached out one of his 4 hands and touched Danny's face. "Such a small thing," he said. "And yet, humans believe their children are precious beyond measure. They fight and die for them. They weep when they lose them." He laughed, and the crowd laughed with him. What a foolish species. Danny said nothing. He was listening, waiting. Then he heard it. A soft sound that no one else noticed. The hum of the arena's power grid flickering. Just for a moment, she was here. The lights went out. The crowd screamed. Emergency lights flickered on, casting the arena in a dim red glow. Guards rushed toward the platform, weapons drawn. Looking for a threat they could not see. And then Myra appeared. She came through the main entrance, walking on all 4s at first, then rising to her full height. 7 feet of silver fur and muscle, moving through the chaos like a ghost. Her eyes found Danny on the platform, and something passed between them. A promise. A bond that distance and time could never break. The first guard who tried to stop her died before he could raise his weapon. The second and third fell a moment later. Mira moved faster than anything Danny had ever seen, her claws cutting through armor like paper. Commander Zoreth screamed orders that no one followed. The guards were panicking, firing their weapons wildly into the darkness. They hit nothing but each other. Mira reached the platform in seconds. She stood between Danny and the Grand Arbiter, her teeth bared in a snarl that echoed through the arena. "What is this creature?" the Grand Arbiter demanded. His voice cracked with fear. "Kill it? Kill it now." Zoreth grabbed Danny and pulled him close, pressing a blade against the boy's throat. "Stop," he shouted at Myra. "Stop or I will kill him." Mira froze. Her eyes locked onto the blade at Danny's neck. Danny looked at her without fear. "She will not let you hurt me," he said quietly. "She promised my mom." Zoreth's hand trembled. "Your mother is dead. Promises mean nothing." "You are wrong," Danny said. "Promises mean everything." Myra moved. One moment she was standing still, and the next she was in front of Zoreth. Her paw caught his arm and twisted. The blade clattered to the ground. Her other paw closed around his throat. Danny stepped back as Myra lifted Zoreth off his feet. The commander struggled, his forearms beating uselessly against her fur. "Please," Zoreth gasped. "Please, I was just following orders." Mira looked at Danny. For a moment, the boy saw a question in her silver eyes. Danny thought about his mother. He thought about the invasion, the cell on the ship, the chains around his ankles. He thought about all the other children who might be taken as prizes if the Vithrani faced no consequences. "He killed my mom," Danny said softly. "He took me from my home." Mira turned back to Zoreth. And then she ended him. The Grand Arbiter fled from his throne, surrounded by guards. The crowd was in chaos, trampling each other to reach the exits. But Danny barely noticed any of it. He felt Myra's paw wrap around him, pulling him close. "We need to go," Danny said. And Ben said there would be a way out. As if on cue, explosions rocked the arena. Ben Harris and a group of freed human slaves burst through a side entrance, carrying weapons they had stolen from the armory. The slave uprising had begun. "This way," Ben shouted, waving toward a service tunnel. "The spaceport is 2 miles east. We have a window." Myra lifted Danny onto her back. He grabbed fistfuls of her fur and held on tight. "Run," Danny whispered. And Mira ran. They tore through the tunnel, past screaming Vithrani and burning buildings. The capital was in chaos. The celebration had turned into a nightmare. And at the center of it all was a silver creature carrying a human boy on her back. Heading for the stars, the Empire would recover. It would rebuild. But it would never forget this day, the day they learned that some prizes fight back. The spaceport was burning when they arrived. Vithrani security forces had tried to lock it down, but Ben and his group of freed slaves had fought their way through. Bodies lay scattered across the landing pads. Both Vethrani and human Myra carried Danny through the chaos without slowing down. Her breathing was heavy now. Danny could feel warm blood soaking through her fur. She had been hit during the escape from the arena, but she had not stopped. She would not stop until he was safe. "There," Ben shouted, pointing toward a small shuttle at the edge of the field. "That one is fueled and ready. I checked it this morning." A group of Vethrani soldiers blocked their path. They raised their weapons and opened fire. Mira twisted her body, shielding Danny with her bulk. Danny heard her grunt in pain as energy bolts struck her side. "Myra!" Danny cried out. She did not respond. She just kept running. Ben and the other freed humans returned fire, creating a path through the soldiers. They reached the shuttle just as more Vethrani reinforcements arrived. The humans piled through the hatch while Myra placed Danny gently on the floor inside. "Go," she seemed to say with her eyes. "I will hold them." Danny grabbed her paw. "No, you come with us. We go together." Myra looked at him for a long moment. Then she climbed into the shuttle, her large body barely fitting through the hatch. Ben sealed the door behind her and rushed to the controls. "Everyone hold on," he shouted. "This is going to be rough." The shuttle lifted off just as the Vethrani soldiers reached the landing pad. Energy bolts struck the hull, but Ben pushed the engines to full power. The ship shot into the sky, leaving the burning spaceport behind. Danny knelt beside Mira on the shuttle floor. Her silver fur was stained dark with blood. Her breathing came in short, painful gasps. But her eyes were still bright, still focused on him. "You are hurt," Danny said. Tears streamed down his face. "You are hurt really bad." Myra made a soft sound. It was gentle, almost peaceful. She pressed her nose against Danny's cheek. "No," Danny said fiercely. "You do not get to die. Not after everything. Not after you saved me." He searched the shuttle frantically until he found a medical kit. His hand shook as he opened it. He did not know how to treat wounds like this. He did not know if human medicine would even work on a Valkathi, but he tried anyway. Danny worked for hours as the shuttle flew through space. He cleaned wounds and applied bandages. He gave Myra water and talked to her constantly, telling her stories about Earth that his mother used to tell him. He told her about oceans and forests and mountains. He told her about dogs and cats and all the animals that humans loved. "You are like a dog," Danny said softly. "But better. So much better. Mom always said you were special. She said the Velkathi were the best thing humans found in the stars." Myra's breathing slowly steadied. The bleeding stopped. She was still badly hurt, but she was not dying. "Not anymore." Ben's voice came from the cockpit. "We have company." Vethrani pursuit ships. 4 of them. Danny looked out the viewport and saw the enemy ships closing in. The shuttle shook as warning shots flew past them. "Can we outrun them?" one of the freed humans asked. "No," Ben said grimly. "We are too slow, and they are too fast. This is the end of the line." Danny closed his eyes. They had come so far. Myra had given everything, and now it would all be for nothing. Then a new voice crackled over the shuttle's communication system. "Unknown vessel. This is Captain Lisa Vance of the human recovery ship New Dawn. We have you on our sensors. Identify yourself." Ben grabbed the communicator with shaking hands. "This is Ben Harris from Haven 7. We have escaped prisoners aboard, including a child. We are requesting asylum." There was silence for a moment. Then Captain Vance spoke again. "Did you say a child?" Danny took the communicator from Ben. "My name is Danny Cole," he said. "I am from Haven 7. The Vethrani took me, but I escaped. Please help us." Another voice came over the channel. It was older, rougher, filled with an emotion Danny could not identify. Danny? Danny, is that really you? Danny's heart stopped. He knew that voice. He had heard it in video messages that his mother saved on her computer. Messages from Earth. Messages from family. Grandpa? Danny whispered. Admiral Stephen Cole's voice cracked with tears. We've been searching for you for weeks, son. Ever since we heard Haven 7 was attacked. We never stopped looking. We never gave up hope. The New Dawn dropped out of hyperspace between the shuttle and the Vethrani pursuit ships. It was a massive vessel, bristling with weapons. 2 more human warships appeared beside it, forming a protective wall around the small shuttle. Captain Vance's voice returned. Vethrani vessels, this is your only warning. The child aboard that shuttle is under the protection of the Human Alliance. Turn back now, or we will open fire. The Vethrani ships hesitated. Then, slowly, they turned and retreated. Danny watched them go through tear-filled eyes. Then he looked down at Mira, who was watching him with tired but happy eyes. We made it, Danny said. We actually made it. An hour later, Danny walked off the shuttle onto the deck of the New Dawn. Admiral Cole was waiting for him. The old man dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around his grandson, holding him so tight that Danny could barely breathe. I thought I lost you, the Admiral said. I thought I lost you like I lost your mother. Mom saved me, Danny said. She told Myra to protect me. And Myra did. She followed me across the stars. She fought an entire empire. She never stopped. Admiral Cole looked over Danny's shoulder at the large silver creature limping down the shuttle ramp. Mira was barely standing, but she was alive. What is that? One of the officers asked nervously. Danny pulled away from his grandfather and walked back to Myra. He put his small hand on her fur and looked at the gathered humans. This is Myra, Danny said. She's not a pet or an animal. She's family. Admiral Cole studied the Volkathi for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Welcome aboard, Mira, he said. Any creature that would cross the stars to save my grandson has a home with us. The Vethrani would send angry messages demanding the return of their property. Admiral Cole's response became famous throughout the galaxy. The child is my grandson. The creature is family. And humanity does not negotiate with those who cage our children. That night, Danny lay in a warm bed on the New Dawn, safe for the first time in weeks. Myra lay beside him on the floor, her great head resting near his pillow. Her wounds had been treated by the ship's doctors, and she was already healing. Thank you, Danny whispered. For everything? Myra opened one silver eye and made a soft sound. It was the closest thing to a response Danny had ever heard from her. He reached down and touched her fur. Mom would be proud of you, Danny said. You kept your promise. Mira closed her eye and let out a long, peaceful breath. Outside the window, the stars stretched on forever. A universe full of dangers and wonders. But Danny was not afraid anymore. He had a grandfather who loved him. He had a crew who would protect him. And he had Myra, the creature who loved him, had crossed the stars to bring him home. And nothing in the universe would ever separate them again.